All right, welcome in everyone, kicking off another deep dive here. And today we're looking at something I think a lot of people have probably seen snippets of online.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a few viral images here and there, but haven't really had the chance to fully understand.
Right.
We're talking about AI art.
Yes.
So we've got a really fascinating collection of articles and interviews all about how artificial intelligence is really becoming a force in the art world.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, creating images like we're used to with computers.
Yeah.
It's really about this bigger question of, can AI actually be creative?
Right.
Can it make art? Where did this all begin? What are the big developments to understand? What are the controversies? And so for our listeners today, I think this is going to be really eye-opening because, we've all seen these flashes of AI images and stuff, but
Yeah.
to really dive into the history, the technology, the implications, it's a really exciting area to explore.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who, likes to follow how technology reshapes the world,
Right.
this is a particularly interesting one. Exactly.
Because it gets to that question of what does it mean to be creative? What does it mean to be an artist?
Yeah.
And so, we've got some, I think, really fascinating milestones to talk about and some, I think, surprising facts about how far back some of this stuff goes.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about when I was looking at this material is that, I think a lot of people hear AI art and they think, oh, this is brand new, this is cutting edge. And in a way, it is, but the roots go back a bit further than I think people might assume.
Right, yeah.
It's not like this just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah, we're not talking about, last week.
Right, exactly.
Computer-generated imagery has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Algorithmic design has been around for decades.
Yeah.
But what really changed things and really took things to a whole other level was the development of these much more sophisticated machine learning algorithms.
Okay.
And in particular, something called generative adversarial networks.
GANs.
GANs, yeah.
And it's kind of it's a mind-bending concept, but it's basically like having two AI systems working against each other.
Okay.
So you have one AI, the generator,
Okay.
that's trying to create images. And then you have another AI, the discriminator, that is trying to tell if those images are real artworks or fakes.
Oh, wow.
And so they're constantly going back and forth.
So it's like a test.
Yeah, it's like a test. It's this constant competition.
Okay.
And in that process, the generator gets better and better.
So like one is trying to fool the other, basically.
Exactly. And through that process of trying to fool the other, it becomes more creative.
Oh, wow.
More able to produce these really convincing and original looking outputs.
So it's actually learning from that process of being challenged and tested.
Exactly. And this was a real breakthrough because before that, computers were basically, they could create images, but it was all based on very specific instructions that a human programmer would give them. But with GANs and these other machine learning algorithms, the computer could actually start learning from huge amounts of data.
Okay.
So they could look at millions of existing artworks.
So it's not just like following a set of rules. It's actually looking at real art and being like, okay, what are the patterns here?
Right, exactly. It's absorbing the styles,
Wow.
the techniques,
Okay.
the recurring patterns.
And then using that to create something new.
Exactly. And this is where it starts to get really interesting because now you're moving beyond just a computer following instructions. You're talking about a machine that can learn and evolve its own creative process.
Yeah, this is where it starts to feel like, oh, this is something that could potentially, create art on its own, not just be a tool for a human artist.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so we have this kind of breakthrough with the technology, but then it takes people to actually start using it.
Right.
And thinking about the artistic possibilities. And we see a few names that come up a lot in the research.
Yeah.
People like Mario Klingman, Anna Ridler. What makes them stand out in this early stage of AI art?
I think they really exemplify how many different ways AI could be used in art.
Okay.
So Mario Klingman, for example, he's a pioneer in what's often called neural art.
Okay.
So that's art that's created using artificial neural networks.
Neural networks. Now, that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down, I guess.
Yeah.
But basically, that's computer systems inspired by the human brain, right?
Yeah, loosely inspired by the structure of the human brain.
Oh, okay.
Incredibly complex systems.
Yeah.
And Klingman uses these in really innovative ways to create these abstract portraits and landscapes.
Okay.
And what's really interesting about his work is how it challenges that traditional idea of what an artist does.
Right, because if the AI is the one actually executing the brush strokes, so to speak,
Right.
where does that leave the human artist in the equation.
Exactly. Is Klingman the sole creator, or is it more of a collaboration?
Right.
He defines the parameters, he selects the training data, but the AI is the one that generates the image.
So he's kind of setting the stage,
Yes.
but then letting the AI perform.
Right. It's a really interesting question of artistic agency.
Yeah, it really makes you rethink what it means to be an artist.
Totally.
Okay, so Klingman is kind of pushing the boundaries of how we think about the artist, and then we have Anna Ridler taking a slightly different approach.
Yeah, so Anna Ridler is known for these really intricate data-driven pieces.
Okay.
So she's using data itself as like the medium of her art.
That's fascinating.
And she's often exploring, what are the stories embedded in this data? What are the potential biases that we might not even be aware of?
Okay.
So her work is very conceptual.
Yeah.
It's about using AI as a tool for investigation.
Right, so it's not just about the aesthetics, it's about the ideas behind it.
Exactly. For example, one of her projects, she used, this huge data set of historical tulip prices
Okay.
to create these visually stunning artworks.
Oh.
And the way the prices fluctuated,
Yeah.
that became like part of the artistic narrative.
So she's kind of like pulling meaning out of data,
Yeah.
using the AI to visualize it in a way that's compelling.
Right. It's a really interesting way of thinking about how data can be used in art.
Okay, so we've got these artists doing these really groundbreaking things with AI. But I think for a lot of people, the moment where AI art really entered the public consciousness was that auction a few years back.
Right.
The Edmund de Bellamy portrait that sold for an insane amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, that was a real turning point, I think.
Can you remind us what exactly happened there?
So this portrait, it was created by a Paris-based art collective called Obvious,
Okay.
and they used a Jan algorithm to create this portrait.
Okay.
And what was so shocking was that they didn't just, put this online. They put it up for auction at Christie's.
Which is like one of the most prestigious auction houses in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it sold for $432,500.
That's an incredible amount of money.
Yeah, it was a huge deal because it showed that AI art wasn't just this, fringe experiment.
Right.
It could be taken seriously by the established art market.
Yeah, it was like a validation.
Yeah, it was validation.
Wow.
And I think that's what really made people pay attention.
Right, because suddenly it's like, oh, this isn't just a novelty.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that people are willing to pay serious money for.
Right.
Yeah.
And it really forced people to confront this question of like, okay, if a machine can create something that's worth that much money,
Yeah.
what does that mean for how we value art? What does it mean for what we consider to be art in the first place?
Yeah, because traditionally we think of art as being, the product of human skill and creativity and intention.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have an AI creating something that's considered valuable by these traditional standards,
Yeah.
it really throws a wrench in the gears.
Totally. It challenges these long-held beliefs about artistic skill, originality, all of that.
Yeah.
And I think it sparked a lot of debate.
I'm sure.
There were people who were really excited about the possibilities.
Yeah.
Of course, people who were skeptical.
Yeah.
But regardless of how you feel about it, its significance as a turning point in the evolution of AI art is, I think, undeniable.
Yeah, that was the moment that it really arrived on the scene.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about the origins, we've talked about some of the key players and this landmark auction.
Right.
But of course, as AI keeps getting more powerful in this realm,
Yeah.
it brings up some big questions.
Yeah, lots of big questions.
And I think one of the most immediate ones is, legal questions about copyright.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
Because if an AI creates a unique piece of artwork,
Yeah.
who owns it?
Right. Who owns the copyright? Is it the programmer who wrote the AI?
Yeah.
Is it the company that maybe owns the AI?
Right.
Is it the person who provided the data that the AI learned from?
Right, like where does that line get drawn?
Exactly.
And is there even a possibility that the AI itself could be considered the owner?
Yeah, that's a really interesting philosophical question.
Yeah.
And these are questions that are being actively debated right now in legal circles.
I bet, yeah.
There aren't any easy answers yet.
Yeah, it's a brand new frontier.
Totally.
And then beyond the legal stuff, there's also the impact on human artists,
Right.
which I think a lot of people are concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a natural question to ask.
Right.
Is AI going to replace human artists?
Right. Is it going to make human art irrelevant?
Exactly. And I think there are legitimate concerns there.
Yeah.
Will the rise of AI art devalue human skill and effort?
Right.
Could it lead to a kind of homogenization of art styles?
Because if all the AIs are being trained on the same data sets,
Right.
then is everything going to start looking the same?
Yeah, these are valid concerns.
Yeah.
But I think another way to look at it is that AI could be a new tool for human artists,
Right.
a new collaborator
Yeah.
that could help them explore creative possibilities they might not have even imagined otherwise.
So it's not necessarily about replacement. It's about changing how art is made.
Right. It's about augmentation,
Yeah.
transformation.
Okay. So it's kind of this double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the potential to be disruptive,
Yeah.
but also the potential to be really exciting
Right.
and open up new possibilities.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners who are out there thinking, this is really interesting, I want to learn more, or maybe even try some of this stuff out,
Yeah.
what are some good ways to start exploring the world of AI art?
Well, there's a ton of resources available now. One of the best ways to get started is to actually try it out yourself.
Okay.
There are these open AI platforms
Okay.
like DeepArt and ArtBreeder,
Okay.
and these are really user-friendly. They have these interfaces where you can upload your own images
Okay.
and you can experiment with different artistic styles.
Okay.
You can tweak the parameters.
So you can kind of play around with it and get a feel for how it works.
Exactly. It's really hands-on.
That's awesome.
It's a great way to just see what AI can do.
Yeah. Just to get your hands dirty, so to speak.
Yeah.
What else?
If you have a chance to see AI art in person,
Okay.
I would highly recommend it
Mhm.
because seeing it on a screen is one thing,
Right.
but when you see it in a gallery,
Yeah.
you get a sense of the scale, the texture,
Yeah.
the presence of the work.
Yeah, there's a different impact when you see it physically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for galleries and exhibitions that are specifically showcasing AI art.
Great tip.
And then for any artists who are listening,
Yeah.
who are interested in incorporating AI into their own practice,
Yeah.
look into these hybrid art workshops that are starting to pop up,
Okay.
where they combine traditional art techniques
Yeah.
with AI tools.
That's cool. So it's like a blending of the two worlds.
Exactly. It's about that dialogue between, these different approaches.
That's awesome.
And also critique groups.
Okay.
So, join or form AI art critique groups where people can come together and share their work,
Yeah.
get feedback, talk about the implications of AI in art.
So it's about being part of the community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, stay updated.
Yeah.
This field is constantly evolving.
Yeah. It's moving so fast.
There are new developments all the time, so follow leading AI art organizations and publications
That's a great tip.
to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening.
Okay. So as we wrap up our deep dive into AI art today,
Yeah.
what would you say is the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that AI art is not just a fad.
Right.
It's not just a technological novelty.
Yeah.
It represents a fundamental shift in how we understand creativity and authorship.
Yeah.
And as we move forward, it's going to be crucial to find that balance between embracing the innovation,
Yeah.
but also thinking critically about the implications.
Right.
How do we make sure that AI art enhances human artistic expression
Yeah.
rather than diminishing it?
The big question.
Yeah, it's the big
Yeah.
question.
And so on that note, we'll leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
As AI gets better and better at learning and replicating artistic styles, what does it even mean for a piece of art to be original anymore?
Right.
Is the human intention behind the AI enough to consider it a form of authorship? Or is it something else entirely?
Yeah.
That's something for everyone to think about.
A lot to chew on.
Yeah, a lot to chew on. And we'll be back next time with another deep dive into a new topic.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening, everyone.